hit the top of the hour and I can formally introduce everyone to today's webinar on the topic of how to gamify your contact center and motivate advisors. I am your host, Charlie Mitchell, and I am the features editor here at Call Center Helper, and I'm looking forward to bringing you some great content and two great speakers today. The first of our speakers today is Alex Hickson from Payzone. How are you doing today, Alex?
Great, thank you, Charlie.
Excellent. And for those who didn't kind of log on 10 minutes kind of for the early kind of housekeeping section of the webinar, I just want to let everyone know what your role is in Payzone and kind of why you're so interested in gamification particularly.
Sure, so I'm head of telemarketing for Payzone. I look after their 2 outbound sites where we have 100 agents conducting telemarketing activity for our range of card acceptance. Payzone and myself, we value people over anything else. So everything we do is with that filter in mind. So that's really what led me to gamification when I learned, the true meaning of it through some really great speakers at great events, led me to kind of spark the interest. I then based my dissertation on the topic, so I spent the past year living and breathing it really, purely to be a better leader to my people, because that's what the true reach of gamification really can achieve.
Absolutely, and I know you mentioned kind of your dissertation there, and there's lots of great of your own research which you can present to us today, which will be awesome. And one of those great presenters on gamification, a fellow one, is Brian LaRoche from Cool Miner. How are you doing today, Brian?
I'm well, Charlie. Good afternoon, and I'm really excited to be here and sharing this this webinar with Alex. I think we got some good stuff to talk about.
Excellent, absolutely. Just for the people again who didn't log on early, what's kind of your role at Cool Miner, and maybe for those who aren't quite sure who are, what's kind of Cool Miner's role in the industry?
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Brian LaRoche again. I'm Director of Outreach Marketing for Call Miner. Call Miner is the leading interaction analytics technology suite to help organizations achieve higher optimal customer outcomes and optimize employee performance through the use of analyzing each and every interaction that takes place within the contact center, automating the scoring that takes place to help evaluate agent performance and those key performance indicators, as well as providing key critical actionable insights on customer experience and customer effort.
Excellent. And obviously I've been at a dress rehearsal of this, and I know that these are two particularly great presentations that we have for you today. And if you want to catch up later and go through the slides, because there's a lot of insights taken today, you can go to www.callcenterhelper.com/recorded-webinars, and that'll be available later this afternoon. And there's also a discussion going on in our chat room this week. It's already very lively today, and that's at www.callcenterhelper.com/chat. An added bonus of being in the chat room is that you can download the slides and download the chat log if you want to kind of reflect back on any of the learnings from today's webinar. And another added bonus of being in the chat room is that there's a bowl of champagne, box of chocolates, or an Amazon gift card, gift voucher for best tip or best question. So hashtag tip for a tip and hashtag question for a question to put to our panel after each of their presentations. But before we go into our first presentation, we have a poll here for everyone, and that is, how do you measure employee engagement? So let's launch that so you can all see it now. Excellent. And your options are CSAT to measure agent performance, annual employee surveys, internal methodology through HR team. That will include kind of quarterly reviews and other kind of agent interviews, speech analytics, and employee turnover. I don't know, Alex, what you're expecting to see come out on top here?
I think employee surveys have become quite popular over the last recent years. I think probably a lot of companies are doing those.
And would you agree with that, Brian?
That is a growing trend. Of course, as a speech analytics organization, the vast majority of customers I see are the ones that are actually using analytics to help and evaluate and measure employee engagement. But I think I've witnessed conversations with a variety of companies that have given responses that for all 5 of these answers.
Excellent. And let's kind of look to see if you're both correct there. So we have 39% CSAT to agents. We have 77% annual employee survey. So Alex, that very much reflects kind of your thoughts. 21% internal methodology through the HR team, 6% through speech analytics, and 36% employee turnover. Excellent. And I think that kind of poll launches very well into your presentation now, Alex. So if I pass you over the baton and you can take over.
Thing.
Excellent.
Yeah, we can see my slide. Fabulous. Okay, so great. Thank you for the introduction, Charlie. So I'll just jump straight into it. So if anyone's here to get some good ideas on fun games, or, you know, the best Survivor Island your call center's ever played, or the most motivational hangman game you could ever come up with, you're in the wrong place. Gamification is not game playing. Do not let the name mislead you. It isn't just about how to, you know, insert games into your daily activity. It's not cars just going around a racetrack. It's so much more than that. And a lot of people are put off from exploring gamification because they think that that's maybe all it is. Okay, it isn't. It isn't about playing games. Do not let the name mislead you. So what is it then? So there's so many different definitions on the internet about what gamification is. So it's quite easy to be confused of its true definition. Oftentimes the definition will depend on who's telling you, because a lot of people now are trying to sell a gamification product. So their definition is really going to lean towards what their product can fulfill. So how do you cut through the noise and you know, really understand what it is? Nick Pellin's definitions on your screen there. He's widely accepted to first coin the phrase. And then you've got Yukai Cho's definition also on the screen. He's really the expert that caught my eye and where I kind of led my research, which I'll explain a little bit more why I followed him in a moment. So what is gamification? So it's everywhere. You'll have seen gamification, you'll have been part of gamification without even realizing it. Apps, education, business, the little stickers on a McDonald's coffee cup that you collect to receive a free one. That's a very basic form of gamification. Duolingo, fantastic language learning app with leaderboards and streaks. That is gamification. Fitbit. I have a colleague that will march around the call center to get her steps in because her friend's just overtaken her and she got a notification to let her know that her friend had overtaken her on the leaderboard. That is gamifying fitness. So gamifying an otherwise boring activity with points, badges and leaderboards. Points, badges and leaderboards, I'd place a safe bet that everybody that's tuning in right now is already using those. Okay, they're you know, very common in a call center. We run especially sales teams on things like that. So but that's not all it is, and that's not enough, and they can often run out of steam. They can get samey, they can get stagnant. It often doesn't really link to any kind of higher meaning. So that's where understanding what the true reach of gamification is and understanding where that will come in. So gamification is a leadership technique. Quite simply put, it is a leadership technique, and leadership is everything. You know, those precious agents that we devote our days to, they need good leadership. They deserve good leadership. It's obviously already essential, which you already know. So using gamification as a leadership technique can ensure that your agents are getting the best out of you and getting that good leadership that they deserve. It's very deeply rooted in human psychology. And until you understand the human psychology of it, your points, badges and leaderboards will run out of steam. That's why that you'll find them going stagnant. You can purchase gamification software packages with dashboards and animated wall boards, but again, you won't realize its full reach, or you won't get the full return on investment from that unless you understand the human roots behind it. So going back to Yukai Cho, who I mentioned, he gets that human root behind motivation and humans' core drivers. He calls his form of leadership is called human-focused design. So that differs from function-focused design. So he's recognizing that there's people in the chain that have real feelings and desires or insecurities. There's things that make them do or not do something. So to optimize those feelings, that motivation, in order to elicit the behavior that he wants from them, is what gamification is. So why is it called gamification if it's not about playing games? Well, it was a gaming industry that kind of first cottoned on to this human-focused design. So the reason people play games is just purely for entertainment. Sure, there's objectives within the game, but the reason we're playing is for our own entertainment. And people can pass hours on these things. You know, before you know it, it's dark outside and you've missed a meal because you've been so engrossed in this fantastic game that keeps you playing for one reason or another. It pushes you forward for one reason or another. So how can we take that almost obsessive engagement and apply it to our business? Well, we look to games first, and that's where we get the title gamification from. So following Yukai Cho's thought train, he saw that almost every game is fun because it appeals to certain core drivers that motivate us towards certain activities. And different types of games use different techniques to push you forward. Some are inspiring and it's more of an empowering way, whereas some are a little bit more maybe manipulative and obsessive manner. But either way, you're being pushed forward. You're pushed to carry on playing the game. So Cho, after assessing this and assessing how these games are keeping us playing, developed this, which you can see on the screen, which is what he calls his octalysis of core drivers, core motivators. And that is that human framework that I referred to. Everything we do links back to one of these core drivers. So as leaders within our business, if we can appeal to all of these, we can better engage and motivate our staff towards a common goal, and it must be a common goal. More on that in a second. So every human fits on here. You know, you've got the positively motivated, those are motivated towards a goal, maybe towards being number one. You've got the negatively motivated, those people that just don't want to finish bottom or just don't want to get the sack. You've got the logical left side brain, the creative right side brain. If you hit all of this octalysis, you're appealing to your whole team. So looking into these a little bit further then, so I can just explain what each one means. Credit to Grant Williams from Legal & General, by the way. He's done an excellent job of kind of translating this into a more contact center applicable example, and he's really got a fantastic handle on this. So epic meaning and calling, understanding the bigger picture, I would maybe call that mission statement almost, and making sure your agents not just feel part of the plan, they feel essential to the plan. They understand the higher purpose of why we're doing what you're about to ask them to do. Empowerment of creativity and feedback, and that's really about giving people the space to make mistakes and that being okay. That's okay, we tried that didn't work, we're going to try something different tomorrow. That's space for them. Social influence and relatedness, there's that covers competition, but it also covers companionship and relating to other people and relating to the actions that other people take, and we can see empathy in that. You know, I really wanted to help that customer because I've been kind of through the same thing. Unpredictability and curiosity, that appeals to the risk seekers among us, those that like a bit of a gamble. Loss and avoidance, so those are the people that just want to avoid something negative. So they're probably more of the negatively motivated people, so they just want to you know, avoid this tragedy at all costs. Scarcity and impatience, ownership and possession, development, accomplishment, all a little bit self-explanatory. Development accomplishment maybe needs calling out because that's where your points, badges and leaderboards come in. However, if it is nothing more than being top of a leaderboard, that's going to run out of steam. You know, what does being top of a leaderboard really mean unless it kind of gives you that esteem from your manager or that esteem from your peers. So if we just go back then and apply this to maybe a common contact center example. So let's think about overtime. We're all in a situation where we'll sometimes need our staff to work overtime. So working through the octalysis, in your communication of trying to get staff to work overtime, hit every single one of these points, and you will probably get a better uptake. So, you know, understanding why we're needing to work overtime and making them feel essential to that. The empowerment and creativity of feedback, perhaps let them choose their own overtime slots. Perhaps there's a timetable up and they can fill in the hours that they want to do. Social influence, you know, perhaps if they find a friend, find a colleague that will work overtime with them, they'll get a bit of a bonus, or they'll get a bit of a prize because they've brought somebody else along. Unpredictability, maybe you could give them a raffle ticket for every hour of overtime worked, and that would appeal to those risk seekers. Loss and avoidance, scarcity, you know, this is the last overtime of the year, or if you don't work this one, you can't work the next one. So do you see how if you run through that octalysis and apply it to the topic at hand, you can actually nearly always hit every point on that octalysis. So what that octalysis should do is really apply as a filter. So kind of think of everything with that filter in mind to everything that you do. You have to consciously hit these points and be very conscious about it, because our call centres are filled with such a variety of people. You might not think it. So I've got a team of salespeople, so I could easily assume that they're all the positively motivated, competitive, risk lovers. But that would be wrong. You know, some of my top sellers are the more negatively motivated people. You know, you've got one of these people in everybody's team. Please don't just assume, oh, I don't have to think about that part of the octalysis, because every human's got all this within them as well. So, you know, it might not be the dominant emotion, but there's still an element of that. Even the most risk averse, don't like gambling, still get a bit of a kick out of a game, of a raffle ticket, and it's just that one that can win it. So really, if you hit every single one of these points, you've engaged every person, and you've engaged every part of every person. Okay, so thinking about application then within the contact center, communication, I think, is probably the most strongest application for this, both written and verbal. So if you just take a second to think about the last time your team received an email from higher management and it landed badly. You might have had comments how they're, you know, they're so out of touch, you know, they should come here and see the front line and see what we're dealing with, you know, an email that's really landed badly. After this, when you've got some spare time, take that email and rewrite it considering every single point on that octalysis, and then consider those two emails side by side, and you will see for yourself the massive change and the better impact that that new email is going to have, because you've worked your way through every single one of those points. And I think maybe in written communication it's probably even more important to do this than verbal communication, because, you know, tonality is lost, intent is often lost. So it definitely will apply to kind of internal emails and things like that. Verbal, of course, your team briefs. I'm sure we're all having team huddles and team briefs. You know, think about that before, when you're planning your team brief. Games and incentives, of course. So are your games appealing to both the positively and the negatively motivated types of people? And then we've got technology, software. I mean, tech is great, and it isn't needed to implement any of this, but it can absolutely help embed it. However, you should understand everything that we've discussed before you go ahead and part with your company's money on buying technology, because you have to understand that human aspect of it, and it requires human follow-up. The race car winning on the racetrack means nothing unless it's getting that pat on the back from your manager. And choose your company wisely as well. You know, are you working with a company that also understands those human roots? I know Brian, our other speaker, certainly does. There are many companies that are just good at tech, and that's great, but they're not understanding the human roots of this technology that they're trying to sell. And you know what, if they did, would they redesign their software? Probably so. So do choose your company wisely that you're going to be working with as well. So from all that, what can, you know, really be achieved? So there's some graphs on the screen for you, and forgive me for withholding the exact numbers as this is company information. But what I've done here is I've taken two teams. One's been managed using those principles of gamification that we've just talked about, and one hasn't. So what you're looking at on the screen is the before and after of that team, along with a control group, so a team that aren't being managed using those principles of gamification. Okay, so shrinkage dropped by half. Why? Maybe because they were part of an epic meeting, maybe because they were being more effectively motivated, but whatever it was made our agents not fall in sick with the sniffles, as is such a battle for contact centres. Productivity increased by 7.5% against the before view and had a positive difference of 7.5% against the control group. And conversion showed the biggest difference. Now, forgive me, the graphs are to different scales, which obviously me withholding the numbers might skew, but conversion actually did show the biggest difference against the control group of a massive 20%. So the results were tangible. They made a difference to our agents' success and the success of our business. And that was in 1 month. We saw that difference in 1 month. So imagine what can be achieved when it's embedded and when it's lived and when it's breathed and when it's second nature to all the leaders in your organization. The mind boggles, and I'm personally very excited to see where I'll take those graphs next. And that's it from me. So thank you everybody for listening.
Excellent, thanks for that, Alex. There's lots of great stuff there. I've noted down kind of the value of using gamification as a leadership technique. I've noted down kind of understanding what your human drivers are, and then using Octalysis as a filter. I thought that was great. And then the kind of other applications of it in terms of games, in terms of communication. I thought your email example was great, and the software also. So lots of great stuff. And while that was kind of going on, the chat room's been humming also. So let's kind of see what tips and questions our listeners have come up with. And the first one's in from Charlie14, great name, who says split level meetings. Ops managers meet the call center teams without their managers present to find out what they really think about the company and their manager. You need knowledge to know how and where to engage. Always get good feedback. The key is to go in without an agenda other than just chat. This leads to the people opening up, and they will really tell you what really bothers them and what they really like. Do you think this is a nice tip, Alex?
I think especially the point about don't go in with an agenda. I think, you know, as leaders, as people managers, we always do have an agenda, and whatever we do, we are furthering that agenda. So, you know, consciously leave that at the door. He's so right. People won't open up if they can see that you've got your own agenda there.
Yeah, I think that's a particularly great point. We've had another tip now sent in from Adam, who says we added a community 1000 piece puzzle for everyone to contribute to during their breaks, which I think is another great tip there. We have one now from Gabriella, who says we have a question, saying how do you go about introducing leaderboards when our agents are used to their KPI numbers being somewhat private? How do you make that transition? I think maybe I'll put this one to you first, Brian.
So I think it's communication. It's something that you should be socializing first. You just don't roll this stuff out. It's one of the things, if you, and Alex talked about this, it's about collaboration, right? It's like getting your teams together, talking about the things that you can all mutually agree upon are kind of universally consistent in terms of both increasing employee engagement and, you know, whatever the outcomes that you're looking. In Alex's case, they're a sales organization, so achieving the right kind of sales that stick, that don't have reduced cancellations or that don't have high cancellations. So getting those conversations going is really in the forefront of establishing a good baseline for any kind of gamification or engagement strategy you're going to play.
Excellent. And I'm sure you go along with that too, Alex, right?
Certainly, yeah. I think that, you know, praise in public, scold in private. So if, you know, what would be holding them back about those KPI numbers being displayed? Is it because there's a fear of embarrassment about being bottom of the leaderboard, perhaps? So a bit of a soft launch, just start talking about celebrating those people at number 1, and then slowly open that up to the top 3 and be celebrating them. So then hopefully, before you know it, that competitive edge is breeding a little bit. It's like, well, where am I then? Where am I? And then an actual full leaderboard is then welcome, because you've only been using the leaderboard as a cause for celebration, and not as a way to beat somebody over the head with it.
Yeah, because I know certainly kind of leaderboards can be a great way to motivate, but being at the bottom of a leaderboard consistently must be quite demotivating, I can imagine. Oh, what's my mouse? There we go. Onto an opinion now from Keith, who says, I agree, we have a nameless leaderboard, so all see numbers but can't work out commission that others are running. So yeah, I think that goes on very nicely with the last points. And we have a tip now from Laura, who says, we've introduced a new rewards program where our agents earn raffle tickets based on their stats, AHD, adherence, QA, survey results that can be used in the raffle at the end of our tax season. They will put their tickets in the bucket that corresponds to the prizes they want. We also will have smaller rewards throughout the tax season to keep them motivated. Another example, you had a stressful call, here's a stressful. Do you think that's a nice tip there, Alex?
Yeah, I think they're great for the games, for the game side of things. Yeah, but just don't forget gamification encompasses it all.
Absolutely. We have a tip now from Scott, who says, use stay interviews. I was introduced to it a few years back at the contact center convention. It's picking up steam as a method in North America. In a stay interview, you ask current employees why they continue to work for your organization. At the exit interview, it's too late to identify and solve problems or to help your exiting employee accomplish the goals. I think that's a really nice idea. Do you agree, Brian?
I think that has real merit. And again, I think it's once again indicative of ongoing dialogue. Don't wait for an annual review or simply a scorecard review as the time to do that. Put aside fixed time that's going to be specific to that more broader open discussion with the employee, that really less formalized and without any repercussions, and let them give you honest, viable feedback.
Absolutely, yeah, I think that's a really good one there, Scott. A question now from Alexander, who says, is there a way to gamify in a way that creates a stronger team approach, i.e. common goals, more like collaborative gameplay, like an escape room? Alex, how would you answer this one?
So I would go back to that first point on the octalysis, which is epic meaning and calling, that mission statement. Why is that team there? What is that mission? And perhaps that mission can be accomplished by divvying up roles amongst the teams. It's like, you're responsible for that bit, I'll do this bit, and working together they'll get there. Or perhaps it's, you know, all hands on deck type of thing. But if the team understands their epic meaning, they will work together to achieve that. And again, they have to feel essential to that plan, not just part of that plan.
Yeah, linking it back to the bigger purpose, I think, is one of my favourite points on the octalysis method that you presented. We have an opinion now from Keith, who says, according to Wikipedia, the octalysis framework is a human-centric gamification design framework that lays out the 8 core drives for human motivation developed by UK Chow. I think you kind of covered that one, Alex, in your presentation.
Yeah, I think people do have to Google him, you know, but they perhaps not heard of him. So that's probably what Keith was doing. But yeah, you know, do look him up, and you know, it's all on his website. It's very open with his research, and it just appealed to me because it focused on people, and you know, that's our way of leading. So yeah, if you put your people first, look after the people, they look after the business. So
yeah, absolutely. We have a tip now from Sarah, who says, I think this is why monetary rewards often have the opposite motivational effect. Some persons crumble under monetary pressure and productivity decreases. Using the octalysis to provide different types of incentives based on the different human motivators would be much more effective. That's a great little point there, Sarah. A question now from Charlie, who says, what do you think what do you all think you want gamification? I'm interested to know why people currently use or intend to use it. So Brian, what are you seeing as the kind of main drivers for people who want to kind of move into the gamification area?
Well, at the end of the day, Charlie, it's all about helping an organization achieve its goals with your employees, you know, solidly behind you in terms of that, so that you've aligned corporate objectives with employee happiness. And so anything that you can do that provides a sincere way of achieving that objective, I think is good. So gamification, and Alex talked about this, there's a variety of different ways that you can gamify. And in fact, in my presentation, we'll talk a little bit about that.
I think this is quite a nice way to kind of lead into the poll for your presentation, Brian. And the poll that we're asking today is, how closely does your agent engagement relate to the customer experience? So I'm just going to put that one up for everybody to answer. And we'll chat. The options for you are very closely, a little bit, or not at all. What are you expecting to come up here, Brian?
Well, I'd like to think it's going to be closely, at least, at minimum, and hopefully very closely, but let's see what the audience says.
Do you imagine the same thing will come up there, Alex?
I hope so, but are people telling the truth, or you know, are they thinking about what they already do or what they would like to do? I think we know it does, but maybe some people are not sure how to make that happen.
Interesting points there. So let's close the poll and find out and share that with everyone. So we have, 57% say very closely, 27% say closely, 12% say a little bit, and 4% not at all. So it's very good to see people really kind of focusing in on that link there between agent engagement and the customer experience. And on that note, I think it's the perfect opportunity to go to your presentation now, Brian. So I'll just pass you over the baton. Oh. There we go. Awesome.
Okay. Good. We seeing my screen?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks, Charlie. Alex, great presentation. And Alex and I had a couple of opportunities to get together before actually doing this webinar. So we had a chance to share ideas and thoughts and concepts, and not surprisingly, we were similarly aligned. So one of the things that, again, as somebody that actually ran a contact center multiple times, I really found that among the biggest challenges is keeping your employees happy. And a study by the Journal of Occupational and Organizational Psychology kind of lends some credibility to the notion that employee engagement and customer satisfaction are very, very closely aligned. If your employees are happy, they're engaged, they're spirited, they're committed to what they're doing, that has a greater effect than virtually any other impactful kind of condition, whether it be a personal issues or health or whatever the case may be. Engagement and CSAT are closely aligned. And so what we've always held true to believe is that great customer experience does in fact rest on great employee experience. If you have happy, productive employees, it's likely that the customers that they're interacting with are going to have an effective, efficient process in dealing with whatever interaction took place with them. Similarly, the customer's level of effort or ease is again improved when employees have the tools at their disposal and again have the appropriate motivations and incentives to help those customers achieve their particular objective. And of course, emotion, which we firmly believe is tied into virtually all customer experiences, is very much tied to how committed, how engaged is the person on the other end of that line in working with you, in owning the issue or whatever the challenge might be. So we talk about, I think we've established the validity of, right, customer experience and employee engagement are aligned. So what happens, what causes demotivation of an agent? I don't even know if that's a word, but I threw it up there. One of the things that we hear most frequently, in fact, a poll taken a few years back, a survey that we did with tens of thousands of contact center agents, said the number one reason of leaving their job was they quit on their boss. And when you delved into that a little bit deeper, it wasn't so much not just quitting on the boss, but quitting on the process of evaluation, right? If you're only manually monitoring a few calls a month, how accurate are you really assessing the overall performance of the agent? And they also cited other things like limited opportunities for self-development or growth. Not having the incentives aligned. And I think one of the questions that was posed earlier on kind of alluded to that, right? You got to make sure that you've got the right things, the right incentives and motivations. And I talk about them more as inspirations to help your employees achieve their optimal goals. I think one of the things that really does create some additional challenges in running contact centers today, you know, the byproduct of a good economy is the fact that you now are struggling to maintain a full staffing of your contact centers. That means you're hiring a broader spectrum of people because you've got to go from the available employee pools. So likely in most contact centers today, anywhere in the world, you're going to see a real mix of generational spectrum. So you'll have the baby boomers, by the way, that didn't jump out to you, I'm one of them, the Gen Xers, the millennials, and we're even starting to see the Gen Zs creep into the equation. Now, back to the issue that was raised before about how do you incentive, and not all incentives work. They're absolutely right, because when you have this broader spectrum of employees in your pool, you have to recognize that not everyone is inspired by the same thing. And we've broken this down. This came from an illustration from Joshua Singh from an organization called Very Well. And he talked about employee motivation. And really, we kind of break that down into the two basics components. Those who are intrinsically motivated, they're the ones that are motivated to perform an activity based on a reward or to avoid a punishment. And then intrinsic motivators, these are the people that typically are more self-inspired to do their jobs well, and they do it for their personal sake and their personal reward. So when you recognize that you have both intrinsically and intrinsically motivated employees, say that 3 times fast, by the way, you'll recognize that you can have some challenges when you're creating a gamification program that's going to help to support the engagement of all your employees. Sorry, I muted my phone, but that doesn't stop it from ringing. So before we get any further, let's talk a little bit about how technology can help to support employee engagement. So speech analytics and interaction analytics, because it's really multi-channel, is the technology suite that allows you to analyze the interactions that take place between an agent in your contact center and employees. And that analytics will also incorporate the kind of metadata associated with who's the agent, who's the customer, or what was the last product or purchase they made, what's their account number, when was their last activity with us, what was their last CSAT rating. It could hold a whole host of different types of data that will help to enhance the analytics. Then you actually create a transcript of the call, the full interaction, speaker separated. So not only do you know who these people are, you know what each of them said as it relates to that particular interaction. Then you add in the acoustics of the call, the level, the emotion, if you will, right? The level of agitation in their voice, the micro tremors, even the rate of speech that typically when people get excited, we know we tend to talk faster. And even more important is silence. How much silence was on the call? What was the pause after an agent or a customer said something? So once you have all of this rich data set, then you run it through the analytics engine and you index and score virtually everything that was said, how it was said, when it was said, who said it, and over what channel or channels was said. Now with this incredible data set of information, you now have what we refer to as intelligent, actionable insights. And now you can take those insights to create scorecards that would associate, that would provide a level of comparative analysis for an agent or for a team leader to see how their agents are doing on all those critical KPIs, right? Agent quality, politeness, empathy, anything that you would manually score, you can automate that scoring. You also now have this extraordinary rich data set where you can analyze and trend data. How are your agents doing? Do they work better on a Monday than a Tuesday, right? We could even start to think about how we can optimize engagement When do we maybe see the drop in performance? Maybe that's time to have a team meeting. Maybe that's when we need that rejuvenation, if you will. So all kinds of insights, both relative to the voice of the employee as well as the voice of the customer. Trends, what are your customers saying about you and your organization? Finally, with all that data, you can also export that to other applications. So a gamification system. Alex was mentioning that there are technologies out there. They're absolutely true. So you can feed the KPIs that are analyzed through the analytics program and feed those into a formal or informal gamification system. So now that you've got this opportunity to use technology to help support your goals and objectives, you now have the advantage of providing a fair and unbiased evaluation to all of your employees. Again, remember when I said that agents tend to quit on their bosses? Well, they're quitting on perhaps what they perceive, and believe me, I ran a contact center, I know this, what they perceive is perhaps a slanted or biased evaluation of a particular call or calls. Now, if you've automated the process and are analyzing 100% of those interactions, trust me, you are going to get a degree of consistency in the scoring. Everyone is going to have those outliers, but with analyzing 100% of the calls, you really are going to see what the true measurement and reflection of an agent's performance is. Both, by the way, the things that they may be challenged, but also let's remember to acknowledge and recognize the exceptional achievements as well. And so analytics provides that. Someone mentioned compensation before in one of the previous questions. We're seeing a growing number of people that are actually using the output from the automated scoring to actually help drive their compensation system. So actually driving the rate that the agent is being paid per hour, or their commission if it's a sales related process. And finally, as I said, the opportunity to funnel and channel for gamification. So we believe that using speech analytics or interaction analytics really affords an organization the opportunity to make both great CX or customer experience happen, as well as great employee experience. And whether it's the effectiveness or ease or the emotion that we talked about before from the customer side of things, to the productivity, the effectiveness of the employee, their ability to get the job done, to help identify the things that can make that employee better and make the organization better. Analytics sometimes will reveal that the problem may not be with the employee. It could be a systematic issue. It could be the amount of time that it takes for an agent to move from one screen or one process to another to facilitate a transaction or some other type of activity. So it'll help to identify those things and make the employees more effective and efficient in that respect as well. So again, that's our firm stance here, is great CX and great EX are really mutually aligned. So if you're drinking the Kool-Aid here and now you're getting that and you're saying, all right, how do we do this? How do we start with this kind of initiative? Well, the first thing you need to do is agree on what do you measure? How do you measure and what do you measure? What kinds of objectives and key results? Charlie, we were talking about this the other day. We refer to them as the OKRs, or the macro KPIs to guide your business. And then once you've identified those measurable company goals, then you have to determine, again, alignment, business goals versus employee goals. So you've got to find that synergy. You've got to find the match there. And if you really do a nice job of that, you can then align your agent's activities to correspond with those business goals. And this is a company that was in a revenue recovery space, and they found that when they aligned and talked to their employees, what did they need, and then understanding what we should incent and what we should motivate and measure on, they were able to achieve a greater level of performance. So this is a chart that hopefully people can take away and kind of use as kind of a visual for how you should be planning your opportunity to extract analytics metrics to drive gamification and engagement. Is, again, define those company goals, define them and build your categories to be reflected in your interaction analytics, identify the opportunities through the analytics that reveals what customers are thinking and saying, and push out that information to your employees, appropriately incent and motivate them, and game on. And by the way, this shouldn't just be at the agent level. There should be a team lead, gamification and engagement. There should be departmental managers all the way up and down your hierarchy. So don't make this just at the lowest level. Quite frankly, that can be insulting to an organization, to the rank and file agents when they say, well, this should be going up the line. And by the way, by doing that, you're unifying the stratas of your organization. So that's an important thing to remember. Remember, when you are building your gamification mechanics, what are you going to reward on? What are you going to incent on? Remember, you've got a generational spectrum to take into consideration. I don't suggest that you create 3 different programs for those 3 different generations, but rather just make sure there are elements that are going to work for each one of those generations. All right. So, and then combining those, you'll see that you'll get a greater level of across-the-board performance engagement. Couple quick case studies. This was a performance marketing organization, a real thought leader within our customer base who did the steps that we talked about before. By the way, all this guidance and advice, we got this from our customers. These were customers that implemented a gamification strategy and told us about how they built it. And what they did was aligning their employees, getting them part of the equation, building the contest together, agreeing on the metrics. They achieved some extraordinary results in a very short period of time. Within 45 days, they saw a reduced order cancellation rate on their sales by 2%. And by the way, I'm going to go to the bottom bullet here. They improved their compliance scores by 10%. They found that when they gave more disclosure information to the consumer before they closed the deal, like, ma'am, if you decided to cancel this order, here's the process that you do that. Well, when the customer heard that an agent was willing to talk about those things, it gave them a greater confidence that they were dealing with a legitimate, reputable organization. So it's really interesting to see how these things correspond. By the way, analytics help to reveal those. So they improved agent morale. Their revenue by agent increased dramatically. In fact, their ROI on this was through the roof. And so it's a great story. And I've actually had the customer tell it at a conference, and it's really exciting to hear. This is another one. This is a consumer lending organization. Now, we know in consumer lending, compliance is still obviously a very critical factor as well, right? We have to make the appropriate disclosure statements, and we have to make sure that everything is done. But we also found through analytics that not only through gamification did we see an increase in performance by the agents, we also were able to analyze where there were some operational deficiencies that were taking place through systematic issues. The process to do things, customers had to enter the data 2 and 3 times. And so they realized, okay, this was causing frustration and it was increasing the amount of time each call took. So they were able to increase their call per hour handling time by almost 1/3 and still increase the revenue they were driving per hour. They increased the value of each one of the loans. And so again, by aligning company objectives and employee KPIs, they achieved tremendous things in a very short period of time. So some quick bullet points on best practices. Again, this was derived from our customers that provided us a lot of feedback. So again, define those desired outcomes. Let's make sure you've got everything, what you want to achieve organizationally and how it aligns from an organizational standpoint. What's the kind of support that's going to need? And by the way, you need top to bottom buy-in to this. So again, creating a program that everyone wins at each strata within your organization really provides a better overall buy-in to the program. Empower, designate an internal owner. And Alex, I love the fact that you guys have brought on an employee engagement manager. That's exactly right. I mean, when I heard that, I was like, that's perfect. The other thing, and we stress this all the time, don't boil the ocean all at once. What I mean is start simply. Start with 1 or 2 KPIs. Really get good, define, refine, calibrate those things. And then you can build on that success. Remember to understand your generational spectrum. Don't try to weight this program one way or the other. Make sure it's inclusive, right? Both organizationally and generationally. And define what your success is going to be. And you should do that right at the very beginning. And then from an ongoing standpoint, this is an opportunity to calibrate and recalibrate, right? So you're going to roll this out. You're going to get some feedback. Make sure you're keeping your employees engaged in this. Do reviews and find out what's working and what you need to adjust. Establish those new behavior outcomes and then pivot. So, Alex, you said this before. You know, you can start a gamification, but if you don't change anything about it, it's going to go flat on you. You'll start to see an element of diminishing returns because you haven't continued to iterate on the program. Establish goals that line up, again, with those organizational key objectives, and be interactive. The more you work it, the more your organization will receive. That's me.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Brian. I thought, again, there were some great pointers there. I've noted down systematic agent scoring to remove bias, which is very key in the contact center. Aligning agent activity with company objectives was another point, in defining your desired outcomes. Also, the second case study, I saw a nice little dual scoreboard going on, and I think a nice little bit of healthy competition is a great way to to motivate a buyer. And quickly, just off the back of Brian's presentation, we've just got a quick poll for everyone, and that's if you would like to see a demonstration of the Call Miner solution that kind of Brian discussed. Just put so now. Yeah, so I thought those points were great, and yeah, I was particularly interested in see the kind of graph that you had there with the how you kind of analyze the company outcomes through kind of aligning the agent activity. I thought that was a really nice piece of information. So we're just going to now cross over to our chat room once again, because it's been absolutely humming once more, and with our top tips and questions. And the first question is from Scott, who says, what is the best strategy to get senior leadership / executive to buy into a gamification strategy? Trying to avoid the feeling that you're just bringing gamification in because it's trendy. Brian, I don't know if you want to answer this one.
So I always find, if I'm talking to an executive audience, be sensitive to what you believe their goals and their real needs are. So I think you always start with, you know, where are the areas of the organization that we are looking to improve upon, and whether it's, you know, a business objective like increasing sales or improving net promoter scores or CSAT or whatnot. Get them talking about the things that are important to them, and then recognize and be prepared to talk about, all right, what are the things that we could do from our contact center, our contact center or engagement center that could help align with those goals. And then explain how, if we provide a gamification strategy for those particular segments, and we get executive leadership buy-in, that they're willing to talk about it, they're willing to be in part of the process, the rollout, and then how you'll apply this across the hierarchy. You'll have not only better executive leadership buy-in, you'll have better employee buy-in too.
Absolutely, I think that's a very good answer there. And we now cross over to a tip from Debbie, who says, we introduced Free Fruit Monday, so it's also incorporated the free element with health and well-being. It's been really well received. I don't know, is this something you're seeing more kind of call centers focusing on the health and well-being aspect?
Absolutely, we provide fruit in our call centers as well. What I will say is, when you first introduce something like that, it's a motivating factor. People are happy, they like it. Oh, this company's great to work for. They're providing me this and that. Eventually, it becomes an expectation. So what you once got motivation from has become what's called a hygiene factor, and you don't actually get any more motivation from it, but dissatisfaction will occur if it's ever removed. Free pizza on Fridays. That is the one. How many call centers buy their agent's pizza and think, oh, they're engaged now? They're not. Free pizza isn't engagement. It's far more than that. So I think absolutely providing fruit from a health and well-being point of view is the right thing to do. Like I say, we do it, but it's not going to provide you long-term motivation.
I think you've also written a great article for us on incentive schemes where you kind of go through those hygiene factors, which I don't know if somebody in the background can put in the chat room, but yeah, it was very well received by our readers, and I think it was a great answer again. And we have another question now sent in from Samantha, who says, in a mixed team with advisors doing different roles within the same team, Have you got any advice as to how to engage advisors all working towards the same goal? Brian, I'll cross over to you for this one.
Sure. Same discipline, same approach here. The one thing you can never do enough of is communicate. All right, that is a universal truth, and getting your team members together, getting your advisors together with different roles, have them share what they're doing, what are their, what are their objectives, what are their challenges, and get everyone talking as a group. And then once you've identified those things where you find commonality, those are the things that you want to focus on in terms of a universal application. And then again, you may want to be able to do some calibrations and adjustments to be a reflection of engagement at the individual role. So do the big things, the universal things, and then get a little bit deeper and find out what are those things that you need within each of those specific roles, and then come up with a plan that addresses both.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's a very nice, well-rounded approach there. And the next tip comes in from Laura, who says, don't be afraid to come right out and ask your employees what motivates them. When you have a broad spectrum of employees, you might get very different answers. So if you survey them, you can use that data to create something that works for everyone. We try to do anonymous surveys on a regular basis to see how satisfied our agents are, so that we are constantly changing our approach to the best results. I think that's a great tip there, Laura. And now we come on to John's tip, who says—
Can I just make a point on that for a second, Charlie?
Yeah,
if you don't
for sure, go for it.
So we refer to the notion of surveys, whether they're employee surveys or surveys that go out to a customer. We refer to that as solicited feedback, right? So we asked specific pointed questions with the anticipation of getting answers that address those particular questions. Speech analytics is what we refer to as unsolicited feedback. And it's by combining both types of solicited and unsolicited feedback, you get the true picture, and with a degree of consistency, again, that sometimes gets a little bit challenging in the heat of the moment. So if an employee survey was sent out right after an employee just got a bad review, one could suspect that survey may have a little bit of jaundice, if you will, based on their recent experience. So being able to apply the two together, and maybe even using the unsolicited feedback to further customize what you're going to ask in your solicited feedback, is the best way to provide a better overall picture.
Yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice. I can imagine kind of someone just having a really bad review and then having a survey shoved right in front of them.
Well, most surveys that come back, only 2% of surveys that are sent out to customers come back, and of that 2%, about 40% are the elated customers, about 40% are the most upset customers, and it's really only a 15 to 20% margin in the middle that are actually giving decent results, right? So when you think about that, it really provides the opportunity to give a better overall picture.
Absolutely. And I just want to quickly kind of move on to one more tip and final question as we come up to 3 o'clock. And this tip is coming from John, who says, we recently subscribed to a recognition platform called Kudos. Very good addition to our organization. Peer-to-peer recognition has been fabulous. I think that's a nice tip there, John. And a question from Charlie again, who says, where do you think the responsibility of the employee engagement lies? Is it the manager's job, the heads, the CEO, or your HR team? What do you think about this one, Alex?
Everybody, it's everybody's responsibility. We all have a responsibility. I think that if your company has, a good value statement, or, a lot of companies have these value statements now. I know Payzen, we live and breathe ours. If you have a very clear value statement, it's everybody's responsibility to uphold that and work towards that and act in a way that is congruent to it. So yeah, it's everybody's responsibility. I think absolutely if the CEO doesn't, it's a struggle, because it's like, why should we if they're not? And so being led from the top is huge. But yeah, it's all of our responsibilities.
Absolutely.
I'll add one more person on there.
Yeah.
Add your agents.
Yeah.
Employee engagement, lies with the agents themselves as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's particularly a great point to end on there. So quickly to everyone that's in our chat room, in 1 or 2 words, if you could just write what you like best about the webinar, because we'd love to attain your feedback and do some surveys of our own. And we have time for our winning tip today, which comes in from Stacey, who says, we use gamification to engage our learners for training and to encourage them to tap into their inquisitive sides and will to learn. This results in more engaged class and more knowledgeable staff as a result. And I think that's a nice one, considering both presentations that we've heard today. And also on the theme of giving feedback, we have a post-webinar survey so when you leave the webinar, please fill that in for us, just 5 questions long. And just to reiterate that we have a replay and your opportunity to look back at today's speaker's slides available on www.callcenterhelper.com/recorded-webinars, which will be available later this afternoon. And a quick look ahead to the next webinars in the series. Webinars next week, we'll be back with first contact resolution. So and 3 other great topics after that. So it's still time to register for those. Just go to www.callcenterhelper.com/webinars. And the final thing that's left for me to do is to thank our speakers. So thanks today, Alex, for joining us.
Thank you.
And thanks to you, Brian.
A distinct pleasure as always, Charlie.
Excellent. Thanks to you both for a truly great webinar, and we'll see everyone again next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.